Right, hi folks, here we are again with another little video. I'm going to make this quite quick and short. So as you can see, this is our table router. Yeah, so clever bit of editing. You'll go from my face to the table router. Basically what it is it's a table that you can buy separately. You buy a separate router, bolt the two together, and basically what you've now got is a spindle moulder, which you will see on the other camera shot at some point in the video. So I'm not going to go through tool changes today because I'll do a separate video purely on how to set up a tool in the router underneath the table, but that will require lots of different shots and it will take too long. So for the purposes of this video, all I wanted to do was show how you can actually make a door, like a cupboard door, out of MDF. And the size of the door, in Blue Peter style, here's one I made earlier, I'll show you in a second. But what I'm going to quickly demonstrate is what we need to do in the first place. So here's some pieces of scrap that I was experimenting with and playing with before I made the actual cupboard door, to kind of get this right basically and figure out what was going on. So in here, make sure the power's off because we don't want our fingers chewed up accidentally. So in here is a rather large routing bit at the moment. That's about 20mm, I believe. But what I did is I put a 6mm bit in there, and hopefully the camera can see the slot in there. So we put a 6mm bit in and we measure and set up and test the router against the cutter until we've got it right smack bang in the middle, because this is 18mm ply. We want a 6mm slot because we're going to use 6mm MDF. I've got another test piece here, but what we're basically going to end up with is 4 pieces of this. You're going to have 2 that have just got the slot in the side, and then you're going to have a top and bottom that have got the slot in, but they've also been rebaited both ends. Obviously this end wasn't done because this is just an offcut piece, but to just give you an idea, basically they are just going to slot together like that, and if you get the sizing right, you end up with a nice flush fit. So basically all I was going to do today is demonstrate the basic process. So we've already put the slot in, and that's no real different to what I'm about to do now. So unfortunately we are going to have to make a bit of noise, so I am now going to plug the machine in and turn it on. And I'm not going to put the extractor on because that will make too much noise, but if we power it on, and the noise has stopped. So there's 2 things that are important there. You notice this is the thickness of the stile or the rail. The stiles are the longest bit, the rails are the shortest bit. Simple as that. But if you put one on its own, as soon as you go past there, if you don't get the pressure the right way, it could tip inwards. That's not good because you're going to get a horrible edge here. So by putting a backup piece against it and holding that really, really tight, you've effectively got a longer, squarer piece, so that when you pass it over, it doesn't dip and you get a nice transition across the fence, which gives you a lovely, clean, straight shoulder there. And now all we do, if you've got it absolutely in the middle, yeah, you can turn it over and pass it over again and cut the back, which will then give you the tongue, which we will just quickly do. Now, I don't know, hopefully the camera will see that. But basically, if you put that together, once that is glued and clamped up, that is really flat and basically a nice join, and any gaps in there will be taken up by glue anyway. But once that's put into a clamp, you've got a nice flat surface there and a nice flat surface there. Now it just so happens in this particular instance, put my teeth in, the distance on these two, it's not perfectly set in the middle, and the reason for that is on this particular one I wanted the top part slightly thicker because we're going to put a 6mm panel in there, and I wanted to differentiate the back from the front because I'm going to have to put hinges on these doors, so I want to put the hinges on the thin side rather than the thick side. And it also, because they're going to be shaker style doors, I want a little bit more depth to keep them in that character. Now if you just bear with me 1 second, as in wonderful Blue Peter style, and if any of you have watched Blue Peter, you'll understand what I'm talking about. If you haven't, shame on you. Right, so now we will just quickly switch that machine off and unplug it so that we don't have any accidents. So this is what I was talking about. This is an actual door. So there are my two styles because they're the longest bit, and these are the two short bits with the ends ribbed and machined. Now what we do have to do is we have to make sure we put the thick and thin together so that when they go together to make that join and they're glued up, we get that flat finish there. We want that nice flat finish here. So we have to make sure when we've used an offset like I have in this one that that happens. And then we slide our 6mm panel in. Right. That's oh, you are a fool, boy. Right. Helps it. I knew something didn't look quite right. It does help if you put the panel in the right way. Otherwise, it doesn't work. See, even the best of us make mistakes. However, that leads me on to a very interesting and very valid point. When you're making anything, it's always a really good idea to dry fit it before you start mucking about with glue. And there's a good reason why you want to dry fit. Make sure everything's working, make sure it all goes together, make sure everything is perfect the way it's supposed to be and that you want it to be. Because if you start messing around with glue and you've made a mistake, before you know it, you've got glue and mess all over the place, and you're going to have an awful lot of horrible cleaning up to do, and it all becomes nasty. And there you have a shaker door. But that's, as you can see, going to be a wide one rather than a tall one. Now, obviously that's not glued and clamped up, but basically that is your shaker door. And it's quite easy really, and obviously once it's all glued up, glue strengthens all the joints. It's not going to be under a lot of stress or anything like that. We would put that in a set of sash clamps, glue it, clamp it up, leave it overnight, let it set, and then when that door is set, the next job that you're going to do is you're probably going to use, I always refer to them as cantilever hinges. They get called by a variety of names, but basically concealed hinges is the common term, and I haven't unfortunately got one to hand, I don't think. I must remember not to do that with my teeth. There we go. That's a really flimsy, really basic cantilever hinge. So big cylinder, you bore a big hole, that fixes to the door and it clips shut, and that clips on to the location plate, which is fixed to the side of the cupboard. So if you looked at it like that, this piece would be fixed to the side of the cupboard, and the door is fixed to this, and the door opens out and closes. And as you can see, if you look at that, if I show you that on the side profile like that, you can see there's a distance between there, and that is basically the overlap of the door. So when that opens, it pulls away from the cupboard, and then when it closes, it kind of folds in but overlaps. It's really hard to explain. You kind of have to see that happening visually. But I did this as a bit of an off-the-cuff video while I was making this door, because I thought, well, I might as well record it, because I'd never experimented with making a door like this before, and I saw someone say, like, oh, you can make doors out of MDF, and I thought, no. But there you go, there it is, door made out of MDF. And like I say, once that's all glued up, that'll be quite strong, and relative to the punishment it's going to take, it's quite fine. So there you go, quick video on how to use the spindle moulder to make a little old MDF door for a cupboard. So if you were making a piece of furniture yourself and you were thinking, how on earth do I make doors, that's how it's done. And of course, if you wanted it a little bit, for the want of expression, flasher, what you would do, in fact, if I just quickly move that door out the way, because I don't want to damage that one, but if I go back to my spare bits, and we go in here, and we get my cutters out. So this is a basic kit of parts, and as that one's already out, I'll take this one and this one, because they're the reverse of each other. So that one is a rounding over tool. If I put it against, you can see that that's just a quarter radius. That goes up against the edge of the material, whoop, and it puts a nice radius on the edge of the material. And this one is called a Roman ogee. If I put that against me as well, or maybe against a bit of tissue, you can see that shape better. And what that does is that goes in and out. So you've got a straight edge, you've got almost like a little rebate into a radius one way and then a radius the other way. So it's sort of a bit like an S. So that's quite a nice moulding. So you could put that around the outside of your door and have that moulding across that edge. And you could also run a moulding down this inside edge. If you were going to run a moulding down the edge of the door this way, instead of putting the rebate in the middle, what you'd probably do is just rebate the panel into the back, which would then give you more meat or material to put the rebate down the front. So you have to think about these things before you start, so that you know what you're going to do and where you're going with it. But these are the kind of things you can do once you've got your spindle moulder or router table up and working. And in industry, this is the kind of thing that they do. But they have machines that are bigger and more advanced, and they are called 5 cutters. Because instead of having just a single cutter like that starts to blunt down quite quickly the more you do with it, they have machines that are set up where they'll have 5 cutters spread across a diagonal line almost, and as the material feeds in, one cutter will start cutting one bit, another cutter will cut another bit, another cutter will cut another bit, another cutter will cut another bit, or it might be a 3 cutter. It depends on how much needs to be involved in the moulding. But obviously, if you look at that Roman ogee, which is a straight, a rebate, and then it goes into a double S, that's quite a lot for one cutter to do. So what you would probably have that done is over 2, maybe even 3 stages. So it would, your first cutter would knock the corner off almost, and then the next cutter would come in and probably start doing the top part of the rebate, that little L shape at the very top, and then the next cutter would start the top part of the S or curve, and then the cutter behind that would come in and start doing the bottom one, so that no one cutter is trying to take off too much material, because the more it's trying to cut, the hotter it's going to get, and the more blunt it gets, the more quick. So it's pretty much as simple as that, really. So there you go, how to make an MDF door shaker style.